The judge's voice slammed through the courtroom like a steel hammer crashing against concrete. If no credible defense is presented before this court today, the defendant will be sentenced to life imprisonment immediately. A poor school janitor sat at the defense table staring at the floor while cameras clicked behind him. His lawyer looked defeated before the trial had even properly begun. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Every financial record, every digital signature, every transaction pointed directly at him. The judge looked ready to end the case within minutes. But something about the man sitting there felt strange. He never argued, never defended himself, never once begged for mercy. Not even when reporters called him a thief. Not even when the prosecutor described him as a criminal who stole from children's education funds. Because the truth, the real truth, the one thing that could clear his name instantly, would also destroy 3 innocent men he had spent 20 years protecting. And Walter Briggs had already decided long ago that his own life was worth sacrificing if it meant saving theirs. He made that choice on a freezing December night 20 years earlier. Today, the cost of that choice had finally come due. Then suddenly, the courtroom doors burst open. 3 men walked inside. And what happened next left the entire courtroom frozen in silence. Before we continue, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from, United States or Jamaica. We always love hearing from you. And if you enjoy emotional courtroom stories like this, make sure you subscribe right now because stories like this stay with you long after the video ends. Walter Briggs was the kind of man most people never really noticed. He existed quietly in the background of other people's lives like part of the building itself. Every morning before sunrise, he pushed his mop bucket through the hallways of Jefferson Elementary School in Columbus, Ohio. The floors smelled like industrial cleaner, chalk dust, and cafeteria grease that never completely disappeared no matter how hard he scrubbed. Teachers walked past him. Students ran around him. Parents barely looked at him. Walter never minded. He wasn't the kind of man who needed attention. He had no office, no desk, no title hanging outside a door. Just a small supply closet on the 3rd floor where he kept extra uniforms, old cleaning supplies, and a tiny framed picture of his late mother taped carefully inside a cabinet so nobody would accidentally throw it away. That little closet was more personal space than Walter Briggs had owned in years. In the winter of 2003, Walter was 41 years old. He lived alone in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment on the east side of Columbus, where the radiator barely worked and the windows rattled whenever the wind blew hard enough. The landlord, Gerald Potats, enjoyed showing up unannounced to remind tenants about rent payments even when the rent wasn't late yet. Walter never argued. He paid what he owed. He kept his head down. And he worked. That was his life. Quiet, invisible, predictable. But Walter Briggs had not always been this version of himself. There had once been another Walter, a younger Walter, a version who believed his future might become something larger than survival. Back in 1984, he had earned a partial scholarship to community college. He planned to study accounting. His mother, Dorothy Briggs, cried when the acceptance letter arrived. She held it against her chest like it was something holy. But then Dorothy got sick. The scholarship didn't cover enough money to survive. Medical bills started piling up. Walter had a choice to make, the kind of choice poor people know too well. Not a choice between good and bad. A choice between impossible and worse. So he stayed home. He took care of his mother. He got the first job he could find. And that job happened to involve mopping floors. 1 year became 5. 5 became 10. And eventually, somewhere between youth and middle age, janitorial work stopped being temporary and simply became his life. By 2003, Walter had worked as a janitor for 17 years. And strangely enough, he had learned to make peace with it. That's the part people who've never struggled financially rarely understand. Peace doesn't always mean happiness. Sometimes it simply means accepting the shape of your life so completely that fighting reality begins to feel more exhausting than enduring it. Walter found dignity in tiny things. Freshly waxed floors shining under hallway lights at 5 in the morning. Children waving at him without judgment. The simple comfort of routine. There was one little girl named Amara, a 2nd grader who used to leave him drawings beside his supply closet. Crayon houses. Smiling stick figures. Bright suns with happy faces. Walter kept every single drawing folded carefully inside his wallet. He told himself it was because children were sweet. But deep down, he knew the truth. Those drawings reminded him that someone noticed him. Someone saw him. And for a man who spent most of his life invisible, that meant everything. That was Walter Briggs at 41 years old. A man surviving quietly on almost nothing. A man carrying loneliness with dignity. A man who had learned how to receive grace in the smallest possible forms. Then December arrived. And the night that changed his entire life came without warning. It was Thursday, December 11th, 2003. By 8 o'clock, the temperature had dropped to 9 degrees. The kind of cold that doesn't just touch your skin, but sinks into your bones like it has personal hatred for you. Walter stayed late that evening rewaxing the school gymnasium floor. Officially, he was supposed to receive overtime. Unofficially, his supervisor Raymond Holt regularly adjusted timesheets to avoid paying employees properly. Walter knew it. Everybody knew it. But Walter also knew rent was due on the 15th. So he stayed quiet and kept working. Around 9:30 p.m. While returning cleaning supplies to his cart, he heard something near the boiler room at the end of the east corridor. A noise. Not the boiler itself. Walter knew every sound that ancient machine made. Every creak. Every hiss. Every vibration. This sound was different. Shuffling. Then a cough. Walter stood still. At first, he assumed it might be a stray animal. Maybe a cat sneaking inside for warmth. Then he considered another possibility. A homeless person. It had happened before during harsh winters. Walter picked up his flashlight and walked toward the boiler room door. He knocked twice. Silence. He knocked again. "I'm not calling anybody," he said gently through the door. "I just want to know if you're okay." For a moment, nothing happened. Then movement. Then slowly, the door opened. 3 boys stood there staring back at him. Identical faces. Identical frightened eyes. Thin jackets completely useless against Ohio winter weather. And all 3 of them were shaking violently. Not shivering. Shaking. The kind of shaking that happens when cold has held onto a body for far too long. The tallest boy stepped protectively in front of the other 2 immediately. "We're not stealing anything," he said. His voice tried to sound brave, but fear sat underneath every word. "We just needed somewhere warm." Walter looked at them carefully. Their sneakers were torn. One pair had holes through the toes. Their hands were red and cracked from exposure to the cold. Beside them sat 3 garbage bags stuffed with everything they owned in the world. And in that moment, Walter Briggs made the decision that would change every remaining year of his life. Not a careful decision. Not a logical decision. A human decision. "You boys eaten yet?" he asked quietly. The tallest one hesitated before shaking his head. Walter nodded once. "Come on," he said softly. "Let's get you warm."